What's up, guys? Mike DOLCE, four-time World MMA Trainer of the Year. And today I want to react to Yoel Romero leaving the UFC and signing with Bellator. Now, I'm a fan of Yoel Romero. I'm a fan of all the athletes out there. And I want to see every MMA athlete make as much money as they can. But the MMA social media world has lost their mind. What am I talking about? Well, everyone's talking about Yoel Romero being this world beater. Now, he's a physical specimen, and 5 years ago, Yoel Romero was a contender for the world title. But we look at Yoel's career recently, and Yoel Romero has one win in the last 4 years. Yoel Romero lost to Robert Whittaker in July of 2017. He beat Luke Rockhold in February of 2018, but then he lost to Robert Whittaker again in 2018, lost to Paulo Costa in 2019, and most recently lost to Israel Adesanya in 2020. Yoel Romero is 1-4 in his last 5 fights over the last 4 years. The UFC letting go of Yoel Romero was a good move on their part because they recognize that Yoel Romero, as good as he has been in his career, is on the backside of his career at this point. And the UFC had said they only want to work with athletes who are at the top of their game, athletes who are contending for world titles. Now, Yoel Romero was born in April of 1977. Yoel Romero's 43 and a half years old, almost 44 years old. So what do you guys think? Now, can Yoel Romero go out there and become a world champion in Bellator? It's possible, but that's like, no disrespect to Bellator, but at the same time, Bellator's light heavyweight division is not nearly what the light heavyweight division is in the UFC. So this is a good move for Bellator. This is a great move for Yoel Romero. This is also a great move for the UFC, who can then clear out their roster, take what Yoel was getting paid. Yoel was getting a 6-figure paycheck just to show up. They can get rid of Yoel Romero, who likely won't fight for a UFC world title ever again. They can take that 6-figure payday and spread it over 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 or more brand new young blood light heavyweights who are on the upside of their career. This is the way the business of MMA works. Now, you got guys like Ariel Helwani and Daniel Cormier and a lot of the other pundits in the MMA game speaking about Yoel, like he's the next thing, the biggest thing, the next, up and coming, contender. But he's not. It's hard for me to get my head around that and to agree with that as much as I like Yoel, right? So this has nothing to do with a personal endearment to an athlete. It's just business, right? So looking at the business of the game, you get a 43-year-old athlete who had already fought for and lost or fought for the world title and was unsuccessful in his bid. I mean, Yoel Romero even missed weight, right? Missed weight while working with Zero Integrity George for the UFC world title fight, thereby rendering him ineligible to even win the title if he was successful in that event, right? So, I mean, you look at that, you look at his multiple times having the opportunity, coming up short, being 43 and a half years old, being paid relatively well. Let me see if I can find his most recent payday here, or one of his recent paydays. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. So, yep, UFC 248, Yoel Romero took home $350,000 for a loss. Isn't that crazy? $350,000 for a loss. The average UFC signing bonus for young athletes coming in is 10-10. Let's say they bring in a 10-10 athlete. They can literally bring in 30 brand new light heavyweights to replace one Yoel Romero. 35 even. Why wouldn't they do that? Cut it in half if every one of these athlete wins, and we could say they're bringing in 15 athletes to replace one Yoel. That's the way the business breaks down. Crazy, but that's the way the game goes. Bellator, on the other hand, will bring in Yoel Romero, will likely pay him a very nice six-figure plus show. Bellator likes to weight their contracts a little differently. The athletes get more upfront money, not as much for a win. They don't have as much potential for big paydays like they do in the UFC, but they do make more money on average in Bellator than they do in the UFC. What does that mean? Certain athletes in Bellator might get a $150,000 show and a $25,000 win. Right, that puts them at 175 or so, where another similar UFC athlete might fight for 100 and 100, 125, 125. Right, so when you get the plus and minus, the 50-50, the UFC athletes, you got to win in the UFC to make bigger paydays. In Bellator, you can have a more or a higher average income in Bellator while not having the highest possible threshold as they do in the UFC, which have the big pay-per-view events and the big main cards. Different business model, and I actually like both business models. I work with and consult with athletes on both rosters, and both organizations do an amazing job. But again, back to Yoel. When we see Yoel leaving the UFC, was that a good thing? Yeah, it was a great thing. It was a great thing for the UFC to get Yoel off their roster to free up multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring in new, fresh, young blood. It was a great thing for Yoel to leave the UFC roster, to which he was struggling to fight against the top-tier talent. It was time for him to now move on and have a second life to his career, which I think is a great thing. And it was great for Bellator to bring in a big name. I mean, people are going to watch Yoel Romero fight. Of course they are. It brings up interesting matchups. Having a guy like Yoel Romero, maybe fighting a guy like Ryan Bader. Some were talking about Anthony Rumble Johnson. These are pretty interesting fights moving forward. Bellator now, just with those three guys, has some excitement. Tito Ortiz, God forbid, Tito Ortiz comes back. I don't think Tito's fighting any of those three guys. That's not a good fight for Tito. So I think Yoel going over to Bellator is a good thing for everybody involved. But what do you guys think? What do you think on Yoel Romero leaving the UFC, signing with Bellator? Who got the best of the deal? I think it's pretty even. I think everybody wins in this deal, and that's rare. It's rare for everyone to win in a case like that, but in this case, I think everybody wins in this, and that's nice to see. I think it's good for the sport, it's good for the athlete, it's good for the promoters, it's good for the fans, and that's my point here. So what do you guys think? Leave comments below. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on it, and until next time, boom.